Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, a podcast by me, Mark Decano, where through guile, flattery and begging, I somehow get the people I admire and respect to waste a precious hour of their time talking to me, the very antithesis of an influencer, about their opinions and experiences in comedy. My guest this episode is a familiar voice to the thousands of listeners of the Star Radio Cambridgeshire Breakfast Show and MKFM, but she is better known to me as a budding stand-up comedian. With a multitude of stand-up spots under her belt, I predict we'll be hearing a lot more on the circuit as well as the airwaves from broadcaster and stand-up comedian Ros Hale. Hi, Ros.
Hi.
All good? Happy?
Yeah, perfect.
So what's with the lint bells?
My badges of honour. You know when people go to a festival and they wear the festival long after they've come back from the festival? Well, after Easter, because I can eat more chocolate than anyone else I know, I just don't feel sick on chocolate. And so I eat tons of it. And the lint bunnies, obviously, they come with a little bell.
Yes.
And so I wear them. And I wear them for the full week after Easter as well, just so everyone knows how many I've done. I mean, I've got them from every year, but I don't cheat. They are only from the current year. And so the picture there was only 3. But that wasn't even Easter. We hadn't even got to Good Friday at the point that I'd taken that picture. It was like a Wednesday or something. And so I managed to do 12. So I think 12 over a bank holiday weekend for Easter. I mean, that's some good going, isn't it?
Yeah, I have literally nothing to compare that to, but yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah. So that's just my love of chocolate. So it's the only vice I have because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything other than I don't do drugs, but I do eat copious amounts of sugar.
So tell me, how does young Ros Hale become interested in comedy? How does it come into your life? I
wrote my first stand-up set when I was 17 and I performed it when I was 47. So I would say if anyone's thinking about doing stand-up, if you're going to do it eventually, just do it now. There is no point in waiting. I can't believe it took me that long. I mean, I've loved stand-up like forever. I mean, literally, I was brought up in a family that my dad watched Bilko. I mean, no one would even know what that is. It's a black and white sitcom from the war, Dad's Army, and Einar Hotman, Frank Spencer. So I grew up with that and I had a very fun, storytelling dad. And so it wasn't really, I think, until much later that I appreciated having that sort of an influence because you just watch stuff that's funny. Yeah. And it was always stuff that was funny. It wasn't your soaps and your dramas. It was always comedy. And so I've just loved comedy. I only learned to drive so I could see Jack D at the Glee Club in Birmingham. I really did. Jack D was performing and I've got tickets from me and a friend at work and she cancelled sort of like last minute in the week. And I didn't want to get the train on my own. And I'd got a driving lesson, my driving test on the Thursday. And my driving instructor said, you're not ready. You're not going to pass. So I'm like, well, I have to because I've got to drive to Birmingham on the Saturday. So I need to pass. And so he did a 2-hour lesson before my test. And I literally passed by the skin of my teeth. But then I drove to Birmingham and saw Jack D. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And if you've ever been to Birmingham and to the Glee Club and you've driven, the roundabout where you have to get off because it's pedestrian only and it's off like the cobbled road. I'm like, how do I get off the roundabout? I'm a new driver. So yeah, I mean, Jack D, Eddie Izzard. I mean, Lee Evans was Jack D's warm-up. Wow. This is how long ago we're talking. And obviously we all know what happened to Lee Evans' career. Obviously it just skyrocketed.
Yeah. Did that sort of give you the bug then for visiting live comedy, for watching it?
I suppose so, but also, I'm nowadays, and it's hard to go, because I'm so old, but, we didn't have drama. We didn't have media studies. We didn't have those things at school. It wasn't a career choice. It wasn't a path that anyone could take. If you wanted to do drama, it was outside of school. And so I always knew that I wanted to work in media or sitcom or something performance-led, but I was never going to admit to that. So I got a proper job, went and had a pension, and did what you're supposed to do. But I just wanted to work in media. And I was working when I first left school, I worked for Levi's and they used to make amazing adverts. And we'd all go on the coach and watch these amazing advert launches. And there was a guy there who did the advert and I got speaking to him and said, I want to work in the media. I want to work in anything. And he said, are you interested in post-production? I'm interested in anything. I don't know what post-production is. And so I went then to work for him in London doing them post-production, went on all the front of house courses and all the editing lists, and all the things that you could have done, and then sort of like got into it that way. And we also, Virgin Radio were up the road, like Virgin Media were up the road when Chris Evans was on. And so we would do radio interviews from our studios and rent them out when they were busy. And so we would often have all their artists who was ever signed to Virgin record label, we would do their interviews. And often when an artist is in a radio station, they're not. They're somewhere else, and they've just linked up via an ISDN call. And we used to do all those things. So we'd work with like the Spice Girls, and like the amount of times that Billie Piper, would pop down, because she was at Virgin quite a lot in those days. And it was just then, God, this is a whole new world. I absolutely love it. And I suppose because I then got into radio then satisfied my need to put my thoughts somewhere. So I think if I hadn't have had that, then maybe I might have looked at stand-up earlier. But I've had like 23 years now. I mean, I went into breakfast show radio in 1999. That's 23 years ago. And so 4 hours a day, I've, been mildly amusing. Whereas obviously with stand-up, you can't just be mildly amusing. You have to be really funny for your 20 minutes. But radio really satisfied that need. So I never pushed it. So I think that's the gap between 17 and 47. People are going, you know what? I'd really like to have a go at stand-up because I've loved it so much for all these years.
So how did you come to be in the breakfast show? I mean, I know you first and foremost as from your stand-up, and then I found out about your radio show. But a lot of people will know you predominantly from doing breakfast radio. So how did that start?
Well, after working, whilst I was working in post-production, we would also do nationwide radio. We would often, we would make and produce radio shows because obviously there's still store radio now, but their big store radio was massive again in the 90s and early 2000s. And so I worked with companies that did that. And I was thinking, I saw how much they were getting paid and just thought, I could do that. All they're doing is chatting. So I put a demo together and then just sent it out to everywhere. And it just so happened that Classic Gold at the time were looking for someone to do some little inserts on radio bits of outside broadcasts. We'd like go to someone's house and deliver flowers for their birthday or something, and then get them on the radio and have like this 2-minute chat. And so I did that. And my boss at the time was also looking to put together a breakfast show in Milton Keynes. And he said, I need a female. I've got 2 guys, but I need a female. Would you do a tryout? And there was me and a girl who was doing the National Lottery, because that was a TV show at the time. Yes. And I'm like, well, they're not going to give it to me because she's a known face on TV. But for some reason, they did give it to me. And so then I became part of this threesome of Trevor Kubel and Ros on the radio. And and then that was my way into radio. And then from there, we did Capital Breakfast at weekends, and then moved on to Heart. And then suddenly 23 years has passed, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah. You must love it. So why now, after all this time, did you think, well, you know what, it's time I went out and did stand up and stood on my own?
Well, I mean, when I did a course, but the reason I would never have done the course if it hadn't have been for working for Heart, which I've done for the last like 10, 11 years. Heart, we always knew that Ofcom were going to get involved at some point and change the local hours that you needed to broadcast for, and they were going to reduce them. And the minute they did that, you could just get Ant and Dec on the radio and just get one team to do the whole of Heart, because Heart regional as well as London. So they got obviously Amanda Holden and the lovely Jamie Theakston to do it. And so then we were all sort of then out of a job. Right. And so I thought, well, I'm going to take some time off and do some of the things that I love and join some writing groups and have a go at stand-up and do a course, which is then what I did do. I did the Mike Gunn course at the Comedy Store because I'd been there pretty much every week watching comedy and thought it would just be, I mean, it's just the iconic venue, isn't it, for the Comedy Store. And without that, I wouldn't have gone from sitting and watching it to ever doing it if it hadn't been for a course. Because even though they don't teach you how to be funny, they don't teach you really even like the structure of a joke. They don't really teach you much, but what you do is you meet other people, you get part of the comedy camaraderie and where to go. And people are like, have you done Funny Fackers? Have you done Monty's? Have you done? And all of a sudden you're swept along with all these places to do open mics that before you know it, you're in, which you would never have gone from a punter to go, how do I do that? Because it's behind the scenes and you don't know that until you go to do it, do you? Yeah. So, and then that created a bit of a bug, but that was at the end of 2019. So it was November that we did our finale. Then obviously a handful of months later, obviously 2020, as you all know, lockdown hit. Yeah. And my dad died on the day of lockdown. So I had sort of a very different lockdown to everybody else. He died mowing his lawn in the garden. So, if I could go like that in my 80s, can you sign me up? Because that's the best way to go.
Yeah.
He was mowing his lawn, loves his lawn. Said, "Oh, my arm hurts. I'm gonna have a yogurt." So got him a yogurt. Had nothing to do with the yogurt, but had a heart attack, and that was it.
Yeah.
So lockdown was sort of like trying to get the hospital to fax through death certificates, and because obviously you couldn't go anywhere.
Yes.
You couldn't. They were face to face. Everything just stopped, didn't it? So it was a right nightmare.
Yeah.
And so we were dealing with that obviously for a long time and sorting that out. And it wasn't until one of my friends who was doing like a Zoom comedy night said, "Why don't you come on and do it?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'll come and watch." She went, "It'd be the same time if you're watching or doing it. You might as well just do one."
Yeah.
And then I got back into the mindset of, okay, let's see if we can put together a 5 again. And so I'd say 2021 was really like the only year that I've actually done stand-up from beginning to end.
Right.
So I feel like I've only really done it for a year. And I know other people have done so many more gigs than I have.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. Firstly, sorry for your loss. I lost my dad last year, so I know what that's like. Going into lockdown with not only that to shoulder, but also you've just opened this new avenue of stand-up. How did you find dealing with Zoom, dealing with online? Were you able to embrace it, or was it just like such a different world from what you thought you were getting into?
I mean, Zoom, actually, I know people that have been had funeral streamed live that they're a part of, and they said that was funnier than Zoom comedy. and I mean it kind of was, because Zoom, I mean, it was dire, wasn't it? But it was something. And so I was still doing the radio show because obviously, even though the pandemic, I'd got my own studio at home. So because you couldn't do double-headed, you couldn't be in the studio together unless you were in the same bubble, which we weren't. So I'm like, well, I've got a home studio. That's fine. I'll do it from home. And so everything was already set up. And so it was quite nice to then I had something to get up for.
Yeah.
So, we're still at work broadcasting from 6 until 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of sorting out my mum, because my mum's got Parkinson's. So without my dad, that was a whole new nightmare. And then there was like Zoom comedy. And because all the pro comedians were also bored, they were doing shows. Like Next Up Comedy was just brilliant, because then you had your Ellie Taylors. I mean, Sarah Millican did, I think it was like every Wednesday that you could just join in and be part of it. And you could see how other people worked. Yeah. And lots of people, I mean, like Sarah Pascoe did almost like a one-to-one, like a tutorial on how to be a comedian. She went through a whole notebook. And you go, if the pandemic hadn't have hit, we wouldn't have got that information from pro comedians. So it was just, and also I watched every single special on Amazon, Netflix, you name it, everything on YouTube. So it was a time to just literally absorb all the things that you wanted to absorb that you wouldn't normally have had time for. So, and to be part of it, I mean, it was funny because I'm used to, on radio, you talk, you don't know if the audience laugh or not.
Yes.
So it was almost like a radio show. You go, well, I don't expect anyone to laugh, and the slight delay, and and people's headphones, or people, dogs barking in the background. There was a lot of. So I thought it was all right. It was okay. I was the only person who actually didn't mind it. I'm used to sort of talking to silence. So the fact if no one laughed, and I'll just carry on.
Well, let's look at then, once you're going into stand-up, you're going on stage. I mean, you got your first stand-up show, you approach the stage, they say, right, Ros, you're on. What's going through your mind? What happens next?
So the first stand-up obviously that I did was at the end of the course. So the comedy course at the Comedy Store, you do the finale in obviously the Comedy Store, and thanks to all the other people that I was on the course with, they packed it out. Mm-hmm. And so it was in excess of 450 people. Yeah. And I was the opener. And whether it was funny or not, and almost still now, if I can remember word for word, or if I can deliver what I meant to deliver, I class that as a win. If you laughed, brilliant. But for me, it's like, did I remember it? Did I deliver it how I wanted to? Did I keep the pace that I wanted to? Yeah, that's a win. Yeah. And so and because it all went well, and I ticked all of those boxes, it's like, okay, yeah, let's do it again then. And then I just got braver with, and I'm still not at the stage where there's stories that I would tell on the radio that I wouldn't dream of doing in front of people, because there's still a massive hurdle there. I mean, I've worked in radio for a long time, so people think that I'm used to speaking, and I'd be really funny if I could get the mic and take it into the toilet. Because if you couldn't see me, I would be so much funnier. And also, I've always worked with a co-host. Yeah. So again, if you came on stage with me, again, I'd be way funnier. Right. But so there's that of getting it over, being you're the only person on stage. There isn't anyone to go, don't you think? That you can't have any of that. There isn't that. So I'm still dealing with that fear.
Yeah. So you're much more comfortable than, let's say, as a collaborator at the moment, would you say?
Yes. I mean, I do. Yeah. Because then you've got, you can tell by someone's face if something landed. And if it didn't, then you can pick it up and go with it. Whereas
Yeah.
in a group, you go, well, that person did find it funny, but that person didn't. Or that's a bit mixed. So we just got to move on. We can't deal with it.
Yeah.
Whereas regardless of who's listening on the radio, if I say something and my co-host looks confused, then I can elaborate, or we can then find the funny in it.
Yeah.
You've got that breathing space, whereas I don't have, and I do see that people riff on stage, but I don't have the nerve to do that. So it's literally what I've said, what I've planned, what I've prepared is what comes out.
Right.
At some point, I would love that to change, but I think you've got to be doing it obviously for quite a number of years before you feel relaxed enough to just go, and there was, and then to just go off on one. I wouldn't dream of doing that at the minute.
So is it sort of like you're afforded some protection if you can't see the people who are watching or listening?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I noticed that even because working in radio, obviously people can't see you. But when we've had, we might have to go and give a check to a charity or something after work.
Yes.
So we've all dressed up and done our hair and makeup and we've got nice clothes on. The show has been nowhere near as good as it would normally be because we're all a bit itchy because we're wearing either like suits and proper clothing. and it's weird that if we dress like we're going to the tip and we're comfortable, it's so much better to, it's something you're not worried about. And that's really weird. But yeah, it's when people are looking at you, there's all that, people have got the mic out, the stand probably is the wire cord, I think there's my fly's done up, and there's just loads of things going on that you just don't have in radio where you're just audio.
Yeah. Well, you said about going on stage and basically you say your lines and that's it. But you are able to riff because you can riff with your co-host on the radio, and also you did a spot at G&B. I think where you left your notes on the side of the stage.
Were you
or
there?
Something.
Yeah, and the lovely Callum Mackenzie, who I just did a gong show with him. I mean, he's so good, so good. Callum, if he will be a name, I'm sure, Callum Mackenzie at some point, because he was just brilliant. But yeah, I didn't really know him at the time. But yeah, so I'd had a really busy week, and I was thinking, I don't think I'm going to remember what I'm supposed to be doing on stage. And so I had a notepad, so I just looked at it. And obviously I've got all my bullet points. Yeah. And then when the second half of the show started and I was in the second half, I went back to where I was sitting, which wasn't near my notepad. So I couldn't move it. I thought, well, never mind. But he then saw it. And obviously some of my bullet points are rather eye-catching with certain bodily fluids, death, and so he was just reading them out going, whose set is this? And I was thinking, it's mine. I mean, there were no punchlines sort of on there. Yeah. But I did then. So I thought, well, I've got to sort of make a joke of it because I think I almost followed him. And so I said, you just heard all of my set, so let's just have a drink every time we hear one of the words that Callum's just mentioned, which is then what we did. And I don't think I actually needed the notes. I had actually sort of remembered it, but I thought, well, I've got to go with it because it was my notepad.
But I mean, you delivered that with a calm self-assuredness that, I mean, given what you've just said about, I'll remember my lines and that's it, and being like protected by not being observed. You were very self-assured. I mean, are you inhabiting a different character on stage?
Yeah, what's on the outside is not what's on the inside. And so I guess maybe that's lucky then, because people have always said that you seem so calm, but I am not at all. I've had to do stage work, obviously, with radio the whole time. I don't know why people think that if you can talk on the radio, you would then have the same a skill set to be able to then G up a crowd. But my first crowd from working in radio was 45,000 people at the Milton Keynes Bowl at a concert of Summer Excess. And we'd been asked as the radio station of Milton Keynes to host the event and to bring on most of the acts. Yeah. And so I'm okay if I'm prepared. I like to be prepared. Improv is not for me. I need to know what's happening. And if I'm prepared, I'm okay. And I knew that one of the times I was bringing on Beverly Knight.
Yes.
And so I'm standing by the stage. I'm thinking, I've got her album name in my head. I remember where she's from, what she's done, her new single. I've got all this stuff on Beverly Knight. Absolutely love her. Absolutely fine. Then all of a sudden, backstage, I went, Beverly's not ready. Blue are going to come on. Just introduce the boys from Blue. I'm like, and I had this like panic. And they were like, you know their names. Just introduce them one by one and they'll come on when you call their names. I'm thinking, well, I do know their names, but all the panic in front of people go, will I remember all of their names? I don't know that I will. I was thinking so they're four lads. And I don't know how it came to me. I must have written down, just say lads if I can't remember anything else. And where I'd written down lads, LADS, Lee, Anthony, Duncan and Simon, all the boys from Blue. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll just remember that. And then it was fine. But I then built up this fear in my head of like, I didn't like everyone after the event who'd introduced an act. Like, wasn't that brilliant? Oh, the bus. I'm like, I am never doing that again because that was awful. Not only were all these people looking at me, but you're on two sides of the big screen. No one's there to see me. They're there to see Beverly Knight and Blue and Matt Goss and all the other people that were performing at that time. But you know, when everyone's looking at you, and it was so ever since then, I was like, I don't want to do it. And so I've been scared ever since. Yeah. And so that's why I knew I'd need to do a course to get over walking on stage with a mic on my own. Yeah. It was a known thing that I was always having a co-host with radio. Whenever we'd do anything, as soon as we'd go anywhere, I would say, don't leave me, don't leave me. I wouldn't even do a number plate, you know, on stage saying, can someone move this car? I mean, I don't even want to do that. I don't even do that. I need someone with me. So it's a massive thing that I can actually now sort of go on stage and be, this is slightly desensitized to me getting over this. And I can actually do it without having to go to the toilet a million times. Because we all feel, you know, and I think I've asked everyone, most people are like, you don't eat before. I envy these people that go and have a burger before they go on stage. How are you doing that?
Well, you know, I know I pace for 2 hours before I sit down to do an interview. So,
oh, do you?
Yeah, I know when the comics are going on stage and they say, oh, you know, I've got that anxiety. But does that not give you energy? Does that not raise the challenge?
I mean, I've watched these videos where they say, you know, you're supposed to look up, move your eyes, and that resets your brain. And you have to go, I'm excited. And if you say to yourself, I'm excited 3 times, supposedly you fool your body. They've done it with athletes and all sorts of different people, and they've worked out that it does actually work. Yeah. I don't know whether it does or not, but I do it. So, which is why when you know who's on before you, I will always go to the back of the room, tilt my head backwards, look up at the ceiling, and then go, I'm excited. and then wait, then obviously for your name to be called, and then go, and then just hope for the best.
Yeah. I did a course once where they said, we're not going to use the word stressed anymore. None of these exercises are stressful. They're exciting. Every time you think you can say the word stressed, say excited. And they say, okay, we've got to do a presentation. How are you feeling? I said, I'm so excited, I might throw up.
I'm so excited. And also, I always have my car keys in my pocket because I think I can do anything as long as at any point I know I can leave. And I never told, when we did the finale at the comedy course, at the end of it, I didn't have none of my friends and family came because none of them knew I was on the course. Even my husband thought I was just on a writing course. And because I thought, I'm not going to do the finale. There's no way I'm showing up to do this, but I want to do the course 6 weeks before it. And then I got to know everyone. Everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, you've got to come, don't bail. Yeah. But even then, my car keys were in my pocket. My car's parked like just at the car park at Leicester Square. I'm thinking at any point, I can just leave. I can go. I haven't got to do it. And that does then bring a sense of calm that I can go at any point. And then I feel calmer knowing it's okay. This can stop at any time. Don't worry about it. You haven't got to put yourself through it. Yeah. And then it doesn't seem so bad. And then I can do it.
I love that idea. So I'll just hang on to my car keys and they'll save me.
Yeah, and I'm terrible because I drive everywhere. I don't drink and I don't like getting like trains, and so I literally do drive everywhere. Yeah. So I'm literally parked outside as close as I can to the gig.
I hear phrases bandied around by comics like imposter syndrome. Do you get that when you're on stage and say, I'm not sure I should be here still?
Well, I feel that the level I'm at, and I plan on being at this level until, like, Joan Rivers was one of my heroes, and she's an absolute legend. I mean, she died at 81 and was still at the top of her game, still performing. And so I think, considering that I started this so late with my trajectory, I think I should start to be good by the time I'm 81. And that's where I've set my goals, that I'm just going to keep on doing it until I feel really okay with it. And then every now and again something comes up that you go, God, I wouldn't have thought I would have dared do that. I did a gong show at the weekend, which I was covering for a friend because they didn't want to annoy the promoter from dropping out at the last minute. So look, can I just say that I filled my place with you? It's a gong show in Huntingdon. I'm like, yeah. And it was at commemorative hall or commemoration hall in Huntingdon. I was thinking, well, that sounds very much like a cricket pavilion or something. Do you know what I mean? There'll be like 8 people there, fine. I got there and it's a 200-seater theatre with 180 people that have paid to watch the comedy. I mean, I might not have said I'd have done this if I'd have known. You go, okay, that's another test for your balls of steel, isn't it? And then you go, it's fine, I did it, and it was okay.
Arguably, if you're in a room that big, it's become less personal because there's so many people, they kind of blur into the background. Whereas if you're in a small, intimate room, like you did Comedy Virgins at Cavendish, yeah, that's a small room.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
you can see everyone and they can see you. I mean, does that bear up to scrutiny? Is it like that?
I think the good thing with a bigger venue is usually the lights are so strong that I could only see the first 2 rows anyway.
Yeah.
And so literally I had eye contact with the girl in the front row for literally the whole of my set. And because my current set is quite female orientated, so I was looking for backup, but I was thinking if I do it to a female, that's probably better than looking at some guy who's bought his 14-year-old son when I'm talking about internals and pap tests, you know. So I try and look for a female maybe of my age again, you know, if I'm talking about my wedding anniversary and some stories from that, and you know how long I've been married or the menopause or whatever. You know, I try and choose someone so at least I get a smile of reassurance that yes, I understand what you mean, even if it's not funny. At least I'm saying stuff that's semi-relatable.
I see Eleanor Conway. She's a fantastic comic. Her comedy is definitely not directed at me. There's a very strong female contingent in the room. A middle-aged man on his own is not the target demographic.
Yeah, she's not looking at you.
But the thing is, it's the energy in the room. It's the conviction of her performance that is entertaining. So I think, given your instance there, what you were saying, I don't think necessarily, I can't say the material doesn't matter. Of course it matters. But sometimes if you don't get the joke necessarily, you still feel you're laughing because the energy in the room takes you along.
Yes.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I suppose that's reassuring as well anyway, isn't it? I mean, it's confidence, isn't it? It's always confidence.
Yeah.
And it's funny that because there were so many female comedians now. When I went to go and see Jack D, like when I was 17, all the comedians that I would have listed that were amazing that I saw, from Lee Evans, Jack D, Eddie Izzard. I mean, obviously, Raw and Delirious we all watched those on VHS when I was at school. You know, it was Eddie Murphy at his best. And it was just a long line of like male comedians. And whereas now, someone said, oh, you know, you watch a lot. Who should I go and see? Or, you know, any specials? I'm like, Judith Lucy, you need to go and see her. Sarah Keyworth. Louisa Ollerman, because I saw her show the other day. Absolutely amazing.
I saw her last night. Yeah.
Did you? Oh, well, I mean, like,
fantastic.
Well, I'd say not necessarily material aimed at you, but I mean, just from the gut, from the soul, from the relatability of the rejection, and it's just going to go, wow. I think women at the minute have just taken off. Jade Adams, Desiree Birch. I mean, all of them now, sort of like what, you know, are female comedians. And it's not that I'm bigging up the sisterhood. It's just the fact that all the Jen Brister, all the comedians that I've seen just recently, that are absolutely brilliant. Just happened to be
I saw her last night as well.
She's good, isn't she? I love her. And she introduced
amazing.
me to Maureen Younger, who is amazing. If you watch, I love watching people's early stuff. Yeah, and Maureen Younger, there's some stuff on YouTube from her from like 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was. And you go, gosh, she had something then. Just her relatability, her dryness, everything was just absolutely brilliant.
Because they do a podcast together, don't they?
Yes, Women Talking Bollocks, with Alison Smith as well. Yeah. It's funny what you learn from other people's podcasts, isn't it? I'm a massive fan of Anthony Jeselnik. And it's funny because whoever I say, you know, thoughts and prayers or Fire at the Maternity Ward, watch them. And then I'll get text from people saying, how long in does this become funny? I'm like, then you're not going to get it. If you're not in from the moment he starts speaking, then you're not in. But when I first came across Anthony Jeselnik, he delivers the one-liners, sort of, you know, they're sort of like one-liner jokes, but done as stories. So every story, I went to believe him. So when he talks about his parents being dead or whether it's being a paedophile, I was like, God, what an awful life. And he goes, it's just jokes. On his podcast, he's like, no, my parents are totally alive. And his brother said to him, put me in your special. I don't care who I am, what character I am, put me in your special. And so he made him a paedophile. That's dark.
So yeah, there's something point that you made there. Someone just not getting the joke. So when have you died on your ass?
You know what? The most silent gig I ever did was at the Washington I never know if that's Belsize Park or Hampstead, but in between the two, the Washington's got a beautiful bookcase where it's sort of like the secret comedy room at the bottom. And halfway through, unfortunately, I think I was first, but halfway through the night, Helena Bonham Carter turned up because she was supporting one of her friends who was doing stand-up.
Right.
And so I was quite pleased that Helena didn't see me, although she'd have been. What I didn't realise was, whilst I was doing my set to complete silence, the first 4 rows were full of students and guys. They were lads, and I was thinking, oh, maybe they just don't, because I'm did a bit of a filthy set, or it was like just maybe like female topics.
Yeah.
At the break, they were all Italian students, and they didn't speak much English at all. And so the reason they were looking at me so intently was to sort of, when I'm excited, I can speak quite quickly, and they were trying to follow what I was saying. So whilst it wasn't necessarily the most humorous night, they didn't actually understand any of it. And so it was those nights, like character building, can I deliver my set to silence? Yes, I can.
Does that throw you off at all? Like you said about you go out, you've got to deliver the lines. Do you sort of go, oh, well, I'm not getting the kind of reaction I was expecting, and now I've forgotten where I was, that kind of thing? Does that happen to you?
No. I think it should do. It should do. If you cared, it should do. But again, I'm still in delivery mode of here's my 5 or 7 minutes. And if someone's laughing, that you don't have the extra voices in your head that go, no one's laughing. Oh my God, just move on. Don't ad lib, just keep going. And you have all the voices that tell you that this is silent and not going well. When people are laughing, you don't have those. And so to try and silence those and just keep going with your material and smile a bit as if like, I'm enjoying this is fun, right? To just keep going, I do think is maybe a handy skill to have.
Yeah.
So but obviously it's so much better if you do get, if people are going to laugh. And I'm really bad at stopping to go, oh, people did find that funny, or it took them a beat to catch up, and then they've laughed, and now we've moved on, and I'm terrible for that, because I know you should allow the room to laugh and then carry on and be a bit more involved with the audience. But again, I think it's just time, isn't it? And experience.
Yeah. You've mentioned a lot of names there about people who you saw growing up, people who've been inspirational. Is there anyone who has inspired your stage persona, that person that you inhabit when you're on the stage that we talked about briefly before?
No, I mean, every comedian that I watch, every special that I see, and every live performance that I go, I want to be like that. I think maybe I want to be crazy like Russell Kane. I think has got a very similar onstage persona to my real life persona, whereas I do kind of like I am quite rigid, and I do just like deliver my stuff like a deer in the headlights, whereas like he's so animated. So I think him, and then having just seen Louisa Ollerman, who we've just mentioned, to be able to do, because hers is very much based on stories, and I think because of working in radio for as long as I have, it's been about stories. It's not about one-liners. It is about noticing stuff and bringing your life to other people and to make it relatable. Yeah. And, and I would get that from my dad. My dad is, or was, one of the best storytellers ever. But weirdly, in his stories, every detail was as important as all the details. And so you'd zone out a little bit. Like he'd tell you how he'd driven to the Cotswolds for lunch and found this local pub, and they'd homegrown their asparagus, and this is how long it was. And then they went to a jeweler's and they got some coins valued. And you'd drift out, and then all of a sudden you'd join back in at the point that he'd say, and when the sawn-off shotgun, and I saw I'll be on the news later. You go, back up, what just happened? And it turns out that, they'd been for lunch, and then they went to go and get some coins valued in a jeweler's, and someone with a sawn-off shotgun came in after my dad. My dad held the door open for them. He's on the CCTV and held up this jeweler's, and it was all over the news. And you kind of, this guy was shot. And you go, and you're talking about the length of the asparagus. I wouldn't have led with that. And so, but it's the enjoyment of the story and the telling all of it, whereas I think I might have led with I was kept hostage, because most of my stories might start like that and go, actually, I wasn't. I was just there before the robbers came in. But, that's how in Radioland, that's what we always call it, a trigger lead in, where you start with a massive punchline. So people go, what happened? The details aren't necessarily as exciting, but it's sort of got what, but it's sort of true. I was held up at gunpoint. Sort of. They came in after me. I'm on the CCTV. I will be on the news, So, and his stories were always like that. It wasn't until you drifted off and started thinking about something else that the real details would then come out.
Yeah, that's the tabloid headline principle, isn't it? You know,
Yeah,
is it World War Three question mark on the front? You read the paper and read the article. No, it's not.
exactly. Yeah. And so a lot of my stories, so in the more I do stand up, the more I would like to get to really how I deliver stories on the radio. And,
Yeah.
My Laurie Solomon is my hero at the moment and also like Judith Lucy, she's an Australian comedian who is just brilliant how she talks about her life, and she ends I think it's a current special that she's got with an elaborate and expensive joke at the end that's very female orientated. That's definitely worth a watch. But yeah, I watched that and go, I would love to be like that. But then Taylor Tomlinson, again, an American girl, I think she's only about like 25, 26, and she's just amazing. She has this almost, and when you recommend someone and they say, well, what's she like?
Yeah.
The funniest joke for me that always sticks in my mind is when Taylor Thompson is talking about young guys who she's like dated, and none of them ever want to wear condoms. And she's like, I don't know, they just don't want to do it. It's almost like trying to get a toddler to wear a coat over their Halloween costume. And then she does this whole act. I'm like, oh no, you won't see it. And it's just so funny. And you go, if that's the sort of analogy comedy that you like, then you will love her. And I love a weird analogy on something normal is just, brilliant. And with Radio World, we don't really do so much like stunts anymore. But years ago, I managed to shrink my husband's rugby jumper. And it was so shrunk in the wash that it would seize together. You couldn't open it. It was that tiny. And I said, it's literally the size of a greyhound coat. And where we worked, there was a greyhound track, and we said, look, could we come down and we for one of the races, and there was like a charity race, put this on one of the dogs and see if like the coat wins, which they were all up for, and that's sort of like a progression of an idea that you go, all I did was shrink a jumper, but what can we do with that? Like it is literally now the size of a greyhound coat. So let's go and see if like the winning dog could wear it. You didn't, it lost, but
oh well, okay.
Always bet on the dog that goes for a poop before the race. I don't think there is greyhound racing anymore. I think that's kindness to dogs has probably put a stop to that. No, it's probably not your thing, but they used to be big.
You mentioned the Gong Show there, and I mentioned comedy version. So competitions, is that your thing?
When we because of the group of people that I started comedy with, the minute that there was So You Think You're Funny was open, we were like, and we didn't, but it was the pandemic. And so we had feedback given and there was a list of comedians that it could have been. And I've kept mine because it was just really lovely. And I thought that's going to be the best feedback that I ever get. And to be honest, it was also the best video that I'd ever had comedy wise. But it was pretty much a self-tape. I'd done it in front of 3 friends because, they said, look, if you didn't have a set from an actual comedy club, then just do a self-tape. And so I thought, okay, so I got 3 friends and I'm like, right, you just got to listen to my 5 minutes, laugh if you want, or don't, whatever. And so I filmed that. And I think because I knew them and obviously I'd gone over it so many times in my head, and it was like my best entry. But so they weren't. So anyway, you were allowed then you were then put back into the heats in the following year, which were then on Zoom, and we did that. But after that, I just thought, I think competitions, you would place so much importance on, will I get through? Will I make it through to the heats? And if I don't, what does that mean? Yeah, does that mean they didn't like me? And I think that I'm so on my own path, and I know that I can't compete with other people that are doing 3 nights a week in the comedy clubs. You kind of think, well, let's just go on my own journey and take as long as it takes me. And, I still got radio where I get to be, and I get to say funny things every day. So I think, well, okay, we'll just move slowly along. I mean, I won the Gong Show at the Comedy Store last May, and where you win a 5-minute spot, and I've never taken them up on it because I'm just not ready. And so I think, and my friends say, you're never going to be ready. I'm like, I know, but I just can't. I just couldn't do my set in the middle of pro comedians. I went one Thursday when Greg Davies was on, Jen Brister. Who else is there? I was thinking, my God, think if that was me in amongst those people, there's no way I am ready to do that. So I don't know how long the open invitation for when you've won means you can do a spot, but I've never dared take it.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I mean, what is it about these names, these comedians that you've just mentioned, that prevents you from being among
I
them?
think until I can get a set together that I've still got every set on my phone and on my GoPro. I tape everything and I watch it back
Yeah,
and then pull it to pieces and go, okay, what do we need to do for next time?
yeah,
And until I can go from my video to a clip of Jen Brister and go, oh, there's not much difference, then I'm not doing it. And let's face it, that's going to be years. And so I think I'm just going to be happy just doing the open mic
yeah,
and just building up my confidence and then seeing where it goes, rather than, I know everyone says, you should just try and say yes and then worry about it later. But I think also doing something when you're not ready
yeah.
might also have a detrimental effect. But
Okay.
I don't know. But because like I said, the gig I did at the weekend when all of a sudden 180 people were there and I
Yeah,
wasn't expecting that. I got on and did it. But just knowing it beforehand,
yeah,
if they said, look, the Comedy Store, it's just going to be people of your level, I go, oh, okay, I'll do it. Then if I
yeah.
got there and it was all the pros, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'll still do it. But I just
Mm.
wouldn't sign myself up for it, knowing that I'm in between. I'm sure everyone would be so lovely. There'd be such a supportive audience. We go, I don't want them to be supportive. You go, look, she's new, be nice, So maybe at some point.
Yeah. So what's the next level then? What's between doing open mic spots now and being on a named bill? What's in between for you?
I don't know. I mean, for me, because you always looking at whose career do you want, and if I could be just a jobbing comedian where I worked every night and that was my full-time job,
Mm.
I think that I love radio because it's,
Mm.
again, I've done it for 23 years. Maybe it's just an old habit, but it's a place to test things. And also because of the stories that I like to tell,
Yeah.
I really want to work in sitcom, but I don't
Hmm.
want to lose the nerve of ever doing stand-up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Ricky Gervais, obviously hugely successful, but if I could have like 1% of, obviously he started on XFM
Hmm.
and then wrote The Office. And then I know some people say he's not a real stand-up because he didn't go through the clubs, and he didn't. He just, he was already a name and he got a show.
Yeah.
And he does it every now and again. And so I think that, God, if I could have anyone's career, that would be it. Where I worked in radio, I actually
Yeah.
wrote for sitcoms, and then I could still do stand-up once a week. Then
Yeah.
that would be my dream.
So is it writing or performing that you're more comfortable with?
Well, people who write are really good on the blank page,
Right.
and I'm only good at writing after I've performed.
Okay.
So I don't know how everybody else writes their sets, but basically
Hmm.
mine is in my head until I get it together, and then I write it down.
Okay.
So I have all my sets are written down on a Google Docs, but it didn't start that way. And I
Right.
certainly can't ever sit down and write. And so all the ideas that I have for my radio drama sitcom, they're all in my head.
Yeah.
And I've started to write them out on my Google Docs. And so then when I go to do it, I will have to write it up at some point. But it's working backwards. I know I can't remember
Yeah.
who it is. There's a guy who actually makes movies like that. But I'm guessing it's a much longer process than to just be able to sit down and write.
Yeah.
But I mean, Jack D, when he did his sitcom, he didn't transcribe it. He was a person wandering about by the window, sort of like spaffing ideas. And, his co-writer then, sort of like captured all the ideas.
Yeah.
And so I think that, that's why I'd like a collaborative process,
Yeah.
which again is one of the reasons why I did the comedy course, in the hope that I might be able to meet somebody
Right.
who would also go, yeah, I'm interested in writing sitcoms. And I could go, can we do that together? But everyone I've ever met really just wants to do stand-up, and it's a stand-up world that they want to be involved in.
Right. You've talked about a lot of people that you love their stand-up, you love their shows. So obviously, still comedy as an entertainment is still high on the list, and you're not so jaded yet.
No, absolutely love it. I love everything from open mics to pro gigs, all of it.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes, I love it. It was really interesting. If you've seen Backstage on Amazon with Catherine Ryan and obviously all pro comedians doing their set, and how nervous they are when they get to the venue and what they do. I mean, even Frankie Boyle, who is a pro and has been doing it for years, you see him sort of like writing backstage, in the dressing room, and you go, wow, it is all, that's the process for everybody then. You know, because you feel when you're starting out, God, this is never going to seem normal. And when you're ever going to get over this? And then you see pro comedians, you go, oh, it's sort of the same. They all have a bit of that mindset of where they're pacing about. They don't want to eat, or they do want to eat, or they need certain things, and they have to make a note of their set or have like 5 minutes in silence. And so we've all got our own little things, haven't we, that we do before performing.
So at the time of this recording, the Edinburgh Festival is in full swing. You and I are both going to be there at some point shortly. So who do you have in mind? Who is the people that a comedian wants to go and see?
So the people who I've booked already to go and see is David Doherty, Sean Walsh, Angela Barnes, Vic Melody with headsets. I want to go and see Rich Wilson and Vic Slayton do their recording. Yeah, and I'm doing a couple of shows, part of like a compilation. So it's not, again, I deliberately only booked 2, just so I can go and see everybody and see everything. And Lou Cochran, want to go and see her live. I've got a list somewhere. In fact, look, I have so look, Joe Caulfield, Pam Ford. Yeah, loads of people on my list of people that I just want to go and see when I'm up there, and pros and non-pros, just to get a real feel for the whole comedy vibe. But it's not just comedy, is it? I mean, there's like burlesque and all sorts of stuff, but we really only talk about the comedy. That's what we're really interested in. Yeah.
Do you go to see, you've listed a lot of names there, some very, very well known, a few lesser so. Do you go to see other newer comedians?
Yes.
Peers, if you like?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I know open mic night sometimes can be a long night, but sometimes I find that I will have laughed more seeing 15 people than I will having seen 4 pros, at a comedy club. Whether that's just because with a 5-minute set, you've got a higher joke count. You're trying harder. You're not going because we know you. You know, that's the thing, isn't it? If you are an established comedian, we're going because you already bought me. I'm going because I like you. Burns, Lucy Porter, people, I buy into. They were the last shows that I saw at the Stables not so long ago. And you go, yes, I buy into anything. So you could be 8 minutes before we laughed because I'm enjoying being here, because I like you and your comedy and your stories. Whereas on an open mic night, you've got to be like that. And so whether it win, lose or draw, it's quite funny to see, it being hammered out, and then everyone's got a different style, whether they're a one-liner guy, whether they're a story, whether the whole thing's a story. Male, female, younger, older, obviously with the diversity that we've got a lot more now in comedy. So it's interesting and hearing all different sorts of perspectives. So I love it. Absolutely. I mean, I sometimes I just feel like I want to write it all down and then just use all their jokes on the radio because they'd never know.
I've posited a theory in the past that newer comics, free shows, etc., can be funnier than the bigger, more established, high-ticket shows. And I've posited that it's possibly because these people are working harder or trying to put their very best material to get your attention now. Would you say that that's fair? Because you've done a lot of these open mics. Is it your best 5?
Yes, but also I think it's because it's raw.
Yeah.
And also when you see a pro comedian, it's tried and tested. And a lot of stuff that didn't work, obviously has been taken out. You're only seeing the best from the best with the professional delivery and the confidence, which then just makes it up, which is why they've got their 5-star reviews. Yeah. When you've got open mic comedy, we're still doing, does this line work? And then you're leaving it, oh no, it didn't, did it? Oh, and then they'll move on. And you will never get that at a pro gig. And sometimes there's something funny to be had for that. Yeah. When they're trying out new lines or what they're trying to do, and you can see what they're trying to do, and it's not done and dusted yet. And there's something that you're part of at the beginning. We're trying to form an idea. I'm not quite sure what it is yet. And you go, it's kind of funny. It needs you just need to alter that bit around. Yeah. And again, you don't get that. And so I think because I like from the beginning to the end of comedy, not just the end, the results. I love the journey. So it's great. Yeah. And having seen people like from 3 years ago get so much better as well from practice. And you go, oh, yes. I mean, I don't know if you've seen like I don't know what it's called, but Mickey Flanagan, his whole show of how he got into comedy, and you saw the early rushes of him doing comedy. If you'd have looked at that, you'd have gone, I don't think you're ever going to get it.
Yeah.
to where he is now. You would
Yeah.
never, there was, I mean, I don't know who took the footage, but he was all over the place. It didn't make any sense. There wasn't really any like storyline. And you go, and look at where he is now. Look at where practice has got him. And so it's just amazing to see the journey.
Yeah.
And so again, with open mic, you're seeing it at its rawest level, where people have taken things that, as a pro comedian, they probably think, right, I can't go down that avenue and I don't want to be saying these things. Whereas on an amateur night, we go, we haven't got the insight to go, we shouldn't be saying that, or that's not quite funny, or that's, I've not looked at it from every angle yet.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing stuff that is funny, maybe for other reasons, suggest it landing in the way that it should, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And so that's why I love an open mic night.
Yeah. Do you go and see work in progress shows, the unpolished shows that the big names put together before their big Edinburgh debuts?
Yes, I mean, I saw Maureen Younger not so long ago.
Yeah.
Top Secret, her work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
What else have I seen? I have seen work in progress, because it just so happens that the shows that I have seen have been then their touring shows.
Mm-hmm.
And so I haven't actually seen a huge amount of work in progress ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I totally would. I when I was working in London, I lived and worked there for 3 years,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
If I'd have known what I know now about open mics, I would have gone every single night of the week. Right. And obviously living so far away and being at work early, it's really difficult to get to London and not be really tired, because often the M1 show, I mean, there's sometimes I've got home at like 1:30 in the morning and I'm at work at 5.
Yeah.
And I'm too old to do that anymore. So, but then, you follow people on Instagram and you go, wow, you've done 6 shows in a week. Sometimes you've even done 2 nights, and you just go, oh, I'd love to be able to do that. And you can see why you would get so much better, so much quicker.
Yeah.
But like I said, we've all got to stay on our own path. And until I can move back to London, then, it's just doing what I can.
Yeah. It's funny. I've spoken to a couple of people now and then as they've come off stage and say, "Oh, hi, nice to see you." And like, I can't stop. I've got another show in half an hour, 4 miles away. Off they go.
Yeah. And I was saying, when your second show, surely he's got to be better than your first one.
Yeah. I spoke to, I think it was Lily Phillips, and she did a show and she absolutely smashed it. And then she went along to another show, and I said, "How was that?" She said, "Completely died. It was terrible. Same show, exact same word for word." Yeah. You never know what the audience is going to give you.
No.
So when can we expect to see the first split bill from Ros Hale? When can we see your Coward's Hour, your first 45 at Edinburgh? How far away are these projects?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've never been to Edinburgh before to see what the Fringe is all about, so it's going to be a real eye-opener, I think, to go this year and witness everything, and also just say, oh, I was part of it. I did 5 minutes or 10 minutes somewhere. So that's going to be really good. I think that with there's the Camden Fringe, the Cambridge Fringe, the Bedford Fringe, there are other shows that I've got friends who said, look, can we do half? And so maybe next year, one of those ones. Yeah. I mean, I've got half an hour now that I'd be happy with, and so, but also, so you're having to test it almost in 5s to go, okay, so I've got all those 5s, just put them all together, which is not really what, a half an hour that people are really looking for. Yeah. But I mean, that's probably the way that I would have to do it. Yeah. But again, I like all sorts of, I liked prop comedy for a while. Mm-hmm. I love Spencer Jones. Yeah. And I mean, you've got balls of steel to do prop comedy. And I don't know if I used to play my homemade bagpipes.
Yes.
At a gig.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that?
I saw it on a video online, I think, of you doing it.
Yeah. And so, because you just literally blown up balloon, and you just, instead of tying it in a knot, you just put it over a penny whistle, and it sounds horrendous, but you can sort of make it sound like a bagpipe.
It's very funny.
But it's all set sort of the tone, because I think, people, the thing with radio is people don't know what I look like. And people come up to me sometimes and go, oh, I thought you'd be blonde. And I think that's a compliment, because I think blondes are fun. Whereas the minute that I walk on stage, you can say, I'm a middle-aged woman. I look serious. I look like I'm someone who would shout, "Get off my lawn." And so I think I have to work harder to go, no, I'm a fun person. And so I like the idea of sort of like starting a gig with something that you go, look, this is nuts. I've been doing this in front of a real bagpipist in Edinburgh, and then do that. So then people go, okay, that's a bit crazy. We warm to you now. We can do a bit of comedy. Whereas people do, even if you don't want to, you make that snap decision on someone the minute they walk on stage as to what they look like, as to what they might be delivering. And I know that I have got a face and a demeanor that it is a bit aloof, which is why I'd be funny if I could do it in the toilet and then you didn't need to see me. I was thinking of what character could I invent where I always thought about being like a character where I go on stage and say, "I'm really sorry, the person who you were expecting isn't here. I'm her friend." And then just doing it as if it's like, "Oh God, but she was actually really good." I mean, people in the know would get, that is her.
Yeah.
But I was thinking that would then be a way of disarming everybody for, look, let's just loosen up a minute and just have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
Whereas, you're so expected the minute you stand on stage, you've got to deliver something and it's not funny. People sit there with their arms folded and stony faced. Whereas if you can just go, look, let's just shake it off a minute and let's just have some fun, and people buy into you, then I think you've got people will laugh a bit more because they've relaxed with you.
Yeah. Is that another aspect of Ros hiding in the toilet? The idea that I'll be a character. It's not me. I'm not here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it is me. All I'm doing is hiding the real me.
Yeah.
And because I know people have like a character and they go, God, I've spoken to different character actors and they go, God, I just couldn't go on stage as myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I only ever want to be myself. And that's what I'm still fighting with. You've got sort of like 5% version of me on stage, whereas, I'm quite animated and I'm quite excitable. Whereas none of that comes out on stage because I'll literally just stand still and deliver some lines and hope it was funny and then go. Whereas I want to be a lot more interactive. And I just think, if there was, what I need is, have you ever watched Chelsea lately?
Yes, yeah, Chelsea
She's
Handler,
a comedian,
yeah.
and when her show went on to like Netflix, she always had Chewy. She always had like then this small guy who was then always like her sidekick, and he very rarely said anything, just agreed or disagreed. But I think it made her feel more comfortable, and she was funnier because there was just that moment of reassurance or not from someone else.
Yeah.
And so I need to be a double act. That's what I need to be. A double act where the other one doesn't say very much. Well, I do most of the talking, but at least I'm on stage with someone, because then I wouldn't be as nervous, which is really weird. My mum's got this great story of where I've always been really overactive as a kid. Even as an adult, I have a lot of energy. Even my husband will say, "Have you been to the gym yet? Because you need to go." And so I need to go and work off some energy. And so my mum took me to gymnastics, thinking that I would join in with all the roly-polies and all the headstands and the cartwheels. All I did was stand in the corner and cry because I didn't want to join in. The minute we got home, I started like doing all my star jumps and running about again. I was like, I don't get it. Yeah. And I think that that's obviously a trait and that's why my life has been the way it has, that I've like settled to just keep in radio. I've kept in the background because I still get to use my outlet of thoughts that I think are funny, but I haven't got to do it in front of anybody. Yeah. And it's not until I suppose, you get to the age or maybe the stage in life where you think, you know what? God, if you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? And so, now I'm just slowly pushing myself, but it's just taken so long to get there.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you on Star Radio and I've seen your Instagram posts and I've seen you on stage, and it's very, very funny and entertaining. So how can we find out about you, what you're doing, where you're going to be on?
So, I mean, as for gigs, I know everyone else says, here's where I am this week and here's where I am this month. I never, you're lucky if I even say afterwards, here I was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I literally just doing open mics where and when I can.
Yeah.
But radio wise, I mean, at the moment I'm on the radio every day of the week. So Star, it's a Cambridgeshire radio station, but you can get it, obviously, Alexa, play Star Radio and you'll get it. And MKFM then at weekends.
Yeah.
7 mornings a week.
And finally, Ros, can you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
Comedy in a nutshell. I mean, comedy's great, isn't it? Comedy is a language that we all speak, regardless of language, where we are in the world, what age, it doesn't matter. We can all laugh. And I love the fact that we will laugh within the first 3 months of our lives. So we laugh before we can speak. And that's because we want to connect. And that's what comedy is. It's connection. And the more we can connect with people, the funnier things will be.
Fantastic.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. I love that. I don't think it could have been said better. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been absolutely delightful.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I get rather excited and speak a lot. So I'm also a control freak. So if you want me to edit this, I'm happy to do it.
No, my show, my edit.
We'll keep going. I love it. I didn't know. I love getting introduced to new podcasts. And so I've listened to Nathan Cassidy, Chelsea Berkeley I listened to, Vix, obviously, who I was really couldn't wait to listen to because I love her and everything that she said. So so keep putting great people. I'm sorry that I've ruined this one, but it's been great to listen to. I love talking comedy.
Fantastic. Well, once again, it's been a joy. I appreciate you taking time to talk to me.
Yeah, no worries. Loved it.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.